and welcome to DTV India. Today we have with us KV Karthik, who will speak to us on anti-money laundering. Hello Karthik. So what is anti-money laundering?
Okay, before I get down to what's defining what's anti-money laundering, I want to take a step back to describe what's money laundering per se, so that we get an understanding of what anti-money laundering legislation should address. Money laundering per se, if you look at the definition, talks about an act or a process wherein people who have obtained money which is not through legitimate means to look as legitimate source of funds. So there are three parts to it, or three stages to it. One we call as the placement layer, wherein a person tries to introduce that money into a financial system to show as a legitimate source. The second is the placement layer, wherein he will undertake a number of transactions or move the money around between accounts or buy different products or services, so that it appears that it takes it away from the source of funds and tries to prevent the audit trail from being identified from the source of funds. The third is the integration layer, where actually the person, once it has become legitimate source where the audit trail is not visible, he'll try to get back that money as a legitimate money. Having said that, we also need to be cognizant of the fact that when we talk about money laundering, there are two aspects to it. That's a new term, or it's not a new term per se. It's been known since 2011 when the attack on the World Trade Center happened in US. It's called as terrorism financing. So anti-money laundering legislations look at also countering of financing of terrorism activities. There's a subtle difference between money laundering and terrorism financing. In money laundering, we are talking about illegitimate fund being made to look legitimate. But in terrorism financing, it's primarily the end use of funds. The end use of fund is for financing of terrorism activities. However, the source of fund may actually be legitimate for that matter. So when we look at anti-money laundering registrations, we look at not only trying to prevent a financial system being misused by money launderers wherein they can get the ill-gotten wealth into the financial system, but also to prevent financing of terrorism activities. That's the basic principle of all anti-money laundering registrations across the globe. When I talk about India, the Prevention of Money Laundering Act, which came into force in 2005, forms the backbone of India's fight against money laundering. That's the basic law in India which talks about prevention of money laundering in the country. There are various regulators based on this law who have come out with guidelines. For example, Reserve Bank of India, Insurance Regulatory Development Authority (IRDA) or SEBI. They have come out with various guidelines which organizations within their jurisdiction or within their regulatory purview will have to comply with these guidelines.
And what are the key requirements for AML regulators?
So when we talk about the key requirements, as I mentioned to you, various regulators have come out with the guidelines based on PMLA. What are the requirements? There are primarily 5 requirements, if I can talk about them. Number one, you need to know who your customers are. They call it the know your customer principles. When I talk about know your customer, you need to know the identity of that person, you need to know the source of fund of that person, and basically all the details of that customer before you get into a relationship with him. For example, if a customer comes to your bank for opening an account, you need to collect all this information and then create a profile of that customer. Once you create a profile of the customer, you will also have to do a risk rating of that customer. What do you mean by risk rating? For example, there could be multiple jurisdictions or countries from which a customer might come in, which are pretty prone to money laundering activities. For you to monitor that customer, he will be classified as a high risk customer, because it will be very difficult for you to know the source of funds from that region. Number 2, there are certain businesses which are prone to money laundering activities. So if a person is in that business, you may want to be caution or undertake an enhanced due diligence procedure about those people, or those customers before you enter into a relationship with them. Then there is one more concept called as PEP, which is politically exposed persons. So politically exposed persons are people who are connected with politicians or people in high offices in the public domain, who are identified as high risk customers, and you need to be careful when you are entering into a relationship with them. You have to classify each customer into high, medium and low. For each high risk customer, you need to undertake enhanced due diligence so that you are very sure of who the customer is, what his source of funds is, and he's not being utilized for money laundering activities in your accounts. The second most important aspect is, once you have opened an account, you need to monitor those accounts. You need to know what are the activities that happen in those accounts, what are the transactions that happen in those accounts, are they in profile of the customer which you had created at the time of account opening. So any activity which happens, you need to monitor, and if it is suspicious, you need to report. That's the third requirement of all the regulations. You have to report all suspicious activity. Then besides suspicious activity, there are certain activities like your cash transaction activities which you need to periodically report. So if you have in India, if you have cash transactions in an account, a cash deposit in an account which is more than 10 lakhs in a month, it has to be automatically reported to FIU, which is the Financial Intelligence Unit, which gathers all this information, analyzes this information before passing it on to the investigating agency. So that's the third requirement of anti-money laundering registrations. The fourth most important part is, every organization will have to designate a principal money laundering risk officer. This person is responsible for anti-money laundering compliance of that organization, and you need to have periodic training for all the staff so that they are aware what they need to be doing to comply with these regulations. So you have a policy, the staff needs to be aware of those policies, and you need to be also cognizant of the fact that money laundering activities or money launderers per se are one step ahead of the game always. So you need to be aware of what are the money laundering scenarios which are there in the market, and keep training the staff so that they are vigilant whenever such activity takes place, and they need to report it to the senior management, who in turn can report it as a suspicious activity. Periodically, you need to review your AML framework that you have set in place so that it stands the test of time. You have created a framework maybe 5 years back, 10 years back, but then you need to keep on undertaking an audit or a test of your AML framework to see that they are up to date with the regulations as well as the scenarios that are there in the market.
What are the challenges that organizations face?
When I look at challenges, there are multiple challenges which an organization face. We have been dealing with a lot of these institutions in the country, and primarily, let's understand one thing: these institutions face multiple compliance challenges. AML is one of the compliance requirements. For example, you have another new regulation which is coming in. It's an extra jurisdictional requirement which is called as FATCA, which is called as Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act. From the name of the act, it appears to be a tax act, but the implications of it are far beyond. And the major implication of it is on your know your customer due diligence principles. So when the organization looks at anti-money laundering compliance, they need to be aware that there are multiple regulations which will have an impact on your anti-money laundering registrations. The organizations will have to start looking at comprehensively dealing with these legislations at a whole, because at the end of the day, these regulations not only are there mandatory requirements for you to comply, but they are also beneficial for you. For example, if you know your customer very well, it can help you when you are dealing with the customer who comes in for a loan, for example. So you know the background of the customer, you know whether he can service that loan. So it has its intended benefits. So people need to look, or organization need to look beyond compliance requirement to see the benefits that they can derive from these regulations. Number two is, these organizations have been in existence for a long time. So there are legacy issues. For example, there would be multiple systems which will contain data which need to be monitored. How do you integrate these systems? How do you integrate all the data from these systems so that you can monitor a customer account as a whole rather than doing it in bits and parts, so that you can get the full picture of the transaction or activities of that account and the customer and identify whether there's a suspicious activity or not. That's the second challenge, major challenge which organizations face, of integrating all these systems and the data which are in disparate systems, or integrating these systems so that they are able to integrate the data into a warehouse or a particular system, the anti-money laundering system that they have, and getting the data in the format which is required for them, which will enable the money laundering system to monitor it effectively. The third most important requirement, which is a very onerous task on this organization, is that you need to periodically refresh the customer profile. For example, I may have opened an account 10 years back. At that time, my source of fund or where I worked, the type of business I was in may have been totally different. So you need to periodically refresh the customer account. You need to go back to the customer, get his documentation, get his source of funds, so that you are always up to date with the profile of the customer. That's the most challenging task, because it's not easy for an organization who may have few millions of customer accounts to keep going back to the customer to get this information. That's the third major challenge that organization face. The fourth most important part is an element called a sanction screening. What has happened is, as a part of your regulatory requirements, every account which you open, you need to identify the beneficial owner of that account, the person who controls that account. For example, if I open a savings account, I am the beneficial owner of that account. But if it's a company account, then it will be the private limited company, then it will be the people who own that company who will have to be identified. And you need to run it against a sanction list. As per PMLA, there is a sanction list which is a UN list, which organization need to run this database periodically, because this list gets refreshed periodically, and you need to run your database of customer accounts with these lists to identify if any of the customer accounts are appearing in this list, if the names of those entities or individuals are appearing in this list, because you are not expected to undertake any business with these entities. However, there are certain other countries or jurisdictions wherein you have other lists. For example, US has an OFAC list. That's different than the UN list. Do I need to comply with them? Unfortunately, some of these regulations have over jurisdictional powers. For example, you may may not have a presence in US, but then you need to be aware that you may be sending remittances to other parties in US dollars, which will pass through US shores, and then US can block those transactions if they are appearing in the OFAC list but not in the US list. So organizations not only need to comply with the Indian regulations, but they also need to be aware of the global regulations and wherever it will affect them. So that's a multi-jurisdictional compliance requirement as well, which they need to be aware of.
So what should be the way forward?
As I mentioned to you, the organizations nowadays operate not only in one country, but they operate in multiple countries. So every country has its own money laundering legislations in place, and they need to be in compliance with all these regulations wherever they operate in. Not only they may not operate in these countries, like earlier I mentioned, there are certain regulations which have over jurisdictional reach. So you need to be cognizant of that fact and incorporate that into your AML policies that you design. Number one. Number two, the organization need to have a framework in place which is comprehensive, which is tested periodically from time to time, and is updated with the new scenarios that come into place.
Finally, what are the repercussions of these regulations?
Negative publicity, loss of goodwill, reputational damage, besides financial and legal sanctions, are some of the repercussions which an organization will have to face if they are not in compliance with these regulations. If you have seen the recent past across the globe, regulators have imposed huge penalties on banks or other financial institutions who have not complied with these regulations, and can bring down an organization to its knees as well. India has become a member of FATF in 2010. It's a regulatory body, and that's a prestigious membership to get into. And if you see the last two amendments to our PMLA regulations that have been brought into force to cater to the requirements of these FATS requirements. So it's not only financial institutions which are within the ambit, now even gems and jewelry dealers, real estate agents who are now under the purview of the PMLA Act. So the scope and the ambit of coverage, if I can put it that way, for PMLA regulation has increased, number one. If you look at the recent past, we have seen regulators in India also imposing penalties on a number of institutions, some of them small, some of them huge, depending on the gravity of non-compliance on institutions in India, which shows the regulators' intention of ensuring that organizations are compliant with these regulations. So if I can say in one word, compliance is not an option for organizations who are within the ambit of the anti-money laundering legislation in India.
Thank you, Karthik.